Hey, welcome to my show tonight, and it's seemed like it's been a long week, but once I get these Mondays going on, I am super jazzed. My name is Tom Russell. I'm your host for Life Without Limits, and I'm so grateful that all of you here to listen and watch my show on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, if you get a chance to look at this video that I'm going to be posting later on tonight, or my previous YouTube videos. You can go to lifewithoutlimitsshow.com and you'll see a bunch of them. And I'm really grateful that I'm able to do this. And for tonight, I want to talk about some things with my guest. He's Mr. J, and he's a betrayal trauma practitioner and interpersonal relationship coach. And what does that actually mean? And Jay's going to talk about that. And I think it's really important in understanding relationships because I've seen some of the Jay's videos, and what I've noticed was he dives deep into the problem, what's going on there, but he also dives into solutions because you don't have problems without solutions. It's you just got to have a way to find a way to get out of this muck, and Jay is perfect at that because he speaks in layman's terms, and sometimes you get into that medical speak and it gets to be difficult. So thanks for coming on my show, Jay.
Thank you for having me on.
And as I said, he's a betrayal trauma practitioner, but he's more than that. And he holds a master's degree in education, is ministry credentialed, a certified special education teacher, and author of a children's book, I Am Loved Right Where I Am. And he's a veteran of the United States military, an inspirational public speaker, adoptive parent, and much, much more. And I would imagine you know how to fix refrigerators too, right, Jay?
Well, let's just say thank God for YouTube when it comes to things like that.
Oh, ain't that the truth? That's how I figure out how to do things. So it's a great to have you on the phone, Jay. We've talked, man. It seemed like weeks when we got together, and I wanted to find out. I have some questions I wanted to ask you, and if I can find these questions.
Sure. And if you can, I can just begin talking.
Oh, I got it. I got it. It's not my first rodeo. No, we want to talk about what you do, but just like with all of my shows, we always talk about you have to come through your own personal traumas, and you went through yours initially. We're not going to dive into all that for the half of the show, but we need to find out where you came from. But you endured some personal trauma early in your childhood, starting with your house burning down at age 7. How did that affect you?
Well, listen, with all traumas, traumas stay with you. And as I'm sure you've heard before, the body keeps the score. So I was 7 when our house burnt down. And if I smell any type of timber, soot, fire, smoke to this day, and I'm 47, I'm taking right back there to when I was 7. And, I tell people that oftentimes the saying is, we find our purpose from our passion, but really in truth we find our purpose through pain. So it was from the pain that I found my purpose in life, which is what I do now. But yeah, certainly that fire when I was 7 happened. It was we had a wood stove. It was left open when we left for the weekend, and this was, before cell phones. So we pulled into our driveway, and the only thing left was our brick chimney on our driveway. Everything was completely gone. Everything, family heirlooms, our first haircuts, toys, furniture. It was quite devastating and traumatic. And obviously, observing your parents and their reactions is something that stays with you as well. So all around it was traumatic, not to mention having to go to the rescue mission for a place to stay because we were completely destitute at that point.
How did that change the family dynamic after that? Because eventually your parents divorced, right?
Yeah, so we went to go stay with various family members. My uncle was one of them, uh, who wound up waking me up in the middle of the night and taking me into his bedroom so I can thank him for being generous and kind.
The wrong kind
Um,
of thank you.
and we eventually moved from the suburbs to more of the city area. And I think at that point, my parents really weren't working on things. I think they got kind of a taste of independence, and they just decided it was best to go their separate ways, primarily to save the kids from living in the middle of a war zone, because that's what it kind of became.
And eventually, I can't imagine I remember what it was like in sixth grade, but for you decided that school was not your thing anymore. So you quit school at age 6 or at sixth grade. What'd you end up doing?
Yeah. So, well, family life was difficult, and it was hard to maintain school, and with all the other responsibilities I had, such as party. Well, they're not really responsibilities per se, but got into partying pretty bad. I wound up moving out when I was 14 years old on my own, which left me homeless for a little while. But with all of that, I couldn't maintain school. So I wound up getting two part-time jobs bagging groceries on two ends of the city, completely two ends, opposite ends of the city, because I remember having to run from one when I got off to clock into the other. But at the same token, I was before the age where you were allowed to leave school. So I told one of my jobs that that I went to school during the day, so they would give me hours. And then I told my other job that I went to school at night, so they would give me hours during the day. And that's what I did to support myself, and find an apartment and pay rent for the next few years.
Did you kind of feel like this was kind of situation where you felt you were just surviving and not reaching for things you really want to do, or you were just at a plateau in your life?
When so I was 14, but I was very, very street smart. I was very street savvy, but I had no sense of future. Like even growing up, college was something that the rich kids did across town. It wasn't something that was attainable for me, certainly. So I knew I always wanted better. It was just a matter of how, because I did not have the resources or the tools to even, like, how does one even take that first step in a direction to better their lives? And could I even deviate from what I was doing? Because I was basically just making ends meet with my two part-time jobs bagging groceries. So any deviation from that, I had to, what they say in life, if you want A, you have to give up B. I couldn't give up B, or else I'd be homeless again.
Right. At what point you said something about you got robbed at gunpoint?
Yeah, so when I was on the streets, I got robbed twice at gunpoint. And I don't mean to laugh, I certainly
Right.
don't, but I always think about, what in the world would you rob a homeless person from? Like, what do they have,
Yeah.
But apparently they thought I had something in my pockets, which I didn't at all. So it was after the second time I got robbed at gunpoint. I said, okay, you know what? I got to do something different, because there's no better predictor of future behavior than relevant past behavior. And if this is what's in my trajectory, I don't want to go through this again. I mean, it's very scary looking down the barrel of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started making some decisions of changing my life.
And that's when about the time you decided you were going to get into college, right?
Yeah. So basically, what happened was, I decided to walk to the local community college. And when I say local community college, that was still a 19-mile walk. So I left at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I got there, after they opened up in the morning. And here's all these big buildings. I didn't know one building from the next. I was completely clueless who to talk to, what to say. But like I said, I was relatively street savvy, so I said, if nothing else, I can use my street savvy side to me. I also have a little theater background, which I think helps in a lot of areas, which we can get into. But anyways, I walked into the university, and one desk shuffled me to the next person, who shuffled me to the next person. Next thing you know, I'm in front of this college advisor, and she basically said, okay, well, I'm sure she probably first wanted to say, when's the last time you showered? But she didn't. So she says, okay, I just need your high school diploma. And I said, well, I don't have one. She said, okay, well, how about a GED? And I said, sorry, don't have one of those either. She said, okay, then I need a letter from your parents, some emancipation letter. I said, well, good luck with that too. So, but Jeez. I'm laughing now, Tom, but trust me, these were not fun days. So she said, I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. My hands are tied. You don't have any credentials from education. You don't have a letter from the state saying you're emancipated. You don't have anything from your parents. You don't have a general equivalency degree, diploma. My hands are tied. If you want to go get one of those things, I'm happy to talk to you, whatever. And I no, that wasn't an option, Tom. It just wasn't an option. Simply put, wasn't an option. So I said, then what can I do? And she said, there's really nothing to do. These are the credentials you need to enter, as they call it, overseas university. So anyways, I sat there and I did feel a little deflated. I did, because she had all these applications on her desk, and she kept punching this stamp down, accepted, accepted, next, accepted, next, accepted, next. And here I was, not accepted. So I looked at her and I said, Mary, I said, listen, is there any strings you can pull? Anything at all? There's got to be some strings you can pull for me, because if you get me into college, I promise you that I will prove to you I am college material in the first semester. I promise you. And if not, I'll walk away and we never met. She turned around in her chair, and I knew she was going to turn around and say, okay, you could leave, or I'm going to call security. I mean, I knew that was the next step. But she handed me a sheet of paper. She said, sign here. You have one semester. We never talked. If you don't, A, B, and C. And I graduated with high honors.
No kid. Where did that drive come from? I mean, why did you feel like...
I'm going to tell you something, Tom. This is what I tell people all the time, even kids, when I go to schools and I give my talks and stuff. Listen, I don't have any more intelligence than the next average Joe. I don't have any more suave than the next street kid. I don't have any better looks or money or nothing like that than the next person, whatever. But I'll tell you what I got: determination.
Yeah.
I have some determination that got me through hell walking out holding ice water.
What gets me though is, those people, she was hitting that accepted thing. I would imagine that a lot of those kids who went in there didn't really want to be there.
No, and it was proven when I was sitting in class half the time.
Yeah. So
I made sure I was the nerd sitting up front, though, because, man, I had to prove myself.
Oh, yeah. Did you ever go back to Mary at some point?
I get asked that all the time, and one of these days I need to. Now, this was 30 years ago, and she was a little up there at that time, so I have no idea, even if she's still around. But if she is, I owe her a big hug and a thank you.
Huge. But you were going to college, but then you were working 3 jobs. I don't understand how you're able to do that
with no car. Yeah. So winters weren't fun, and I live in upstate New York, so man, we get like 4 feet of snow.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many times I walked into class completely frozen.
What was your goal then? I mean, once you just got your degree and everything, what did you want to do with your life?
Well, something, I'm going to be honest with you, I had no clue, but I did know the alternative was not in the cards. So I don't care if I spent the next 50 years of my life in class. I wasn't going back to what I was doing. Anyway, what wound up happening was after my first semester of college, I was supposed to register with the registrar's office, and they asked me, "Are you registered with Selective Service?" Now I think I was 19 at this time. And, I don't want to offend any young people out there, but I certainly had what does a 19-year-old know about Selective Service? I said, what in the world is Selective Service? She says, well, call this number, see if you're registered. We need it for our records, blah, blah, blah. So I wound up being on the phone with somewhere downtown, some administration, who transferred me to this person, then transferred me to this person. Next thing you know, Tom, I'm on the phone with an Army recruiter. And he's like, hey, why don't you come down and talk? And I was like, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have no idea how we got connected. I'm just trying to go to college. I'm not interested in joining the military. No one in my family was in the military ever. I mean, no, like, you know. So anyways, he was like, well, hey, we got on the phone for some reason. Why don't you just come down and talk and whatever. And so anyways, I kept saying, no, I'm not interested. But he said, well, listen, why don't we come down, talk, and if nothing else, I can help you maybe with your future goals with college or whatever. So I told him, I said, listen, I will come down there, but you are not getting my signature on any line. I'm just letting you know that. Don't waste your time. So as long as we have that understanding, you know, whatever. He said, okay, yeah, sure. Well, next thing you know, I'm signing 8 years of my life away. But this is what wound up happening. What happened was I went to basic training in the military. Now, at the time, you also needed a high school degree, a high school diploma to join the military. But because I just successfully went through a semester of college, that gave me the 12 college credits that I needed to go into the military. Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been able to qualify.
Yeah.
So anyways, it was just the perfect storm. So anyways, I joined the military and there I was in the Army going away to Fort Knox, Kentucky, doing some push-ups, which I have no upper body strength. So yeah. Lord only knows what what got into my mind with that. But anyway, and then when I returned, I finished school.
So after you finished, this is for your bachelor's, or you got a master's then, right?
Yeah.
That, right?
So basically what happened was I went in initially and I was in the military for a while, and I came back and I finished an associate's degree in therapeutic recreation honors. Then I went in with a double major of my bachelor's degree in theater and psychology honors, or high honors. And then at that point, I kind of settled down. I started working with traumatized youth, and I love doing that. I love doing that. That was such a passion of mine. These kids, I mean, there's stories like for instance, I worked with a young lady. She was 16 years old, and her mother held her down while her boyfriend couldn't impregnate her because the mother couldn't have children, and this was the only way the mother could have a child, by her boyfriend. So these are the kinds of kids I worked with. I mean, very traumatized teens, and I loved it. I loved it because there's nothing like relatability. And I've even found this from a professional standpoint, Tom. People like you. People are more into you with relatability, even over likability. Like, for instance, if you're talking to take, for example, a mother who lost her child, right? If you're talking to a mother who lost her child and you're nodding your head yes, and you're saying all the right words, and you're being sympathetic and empathetic and all that stuff, that's all great, wonderful, and there can be a connection there, no doubt. But when that mother talks to another mother who lost a child, now the conversation has a whole different energy level, whole different wavelength. So I think a lot of times I could relate so much to these kids. And I think because of that, they trusted me. I was able to really get, therapeutically deep with them and do a lot of great work. And I love that. And I did that for about 3 years until I moved close to New York City, because at that time, to be honest with you, I wanted to pursue film and television and theater. And so that's what I did, is I moved to New York. And I mean, I'm digressing now, but, I got on the set of like Sex on the City and Criminal Intent, and I was in a few movies, and, that was all fun, fine and dandy until I went back into, mental health.
Why'd you decide to do that then?
So basically, what wound up happening was I was with a dance company, and we were touring. And we were on our way down to Dallas at the time. We just left Los Angeles. We were on the way to Dallas, and I was sitting next to this dancer who said, "There's a program in New York City where if you audition for it, they'll help you get your master's degree in education, but you have to teach during the day and do this." And I was thinking, man, I don't know if I'm interested in that. but I do love working with kids. I do like auditioning. The chances I'll ever get anything are slim to none, but hey, let me just, throw it out there. So I wound up auditioning, and there was a panel of 6 people, and they said, okay, where's your, what did they call it? Where's your planning? Where's your planning, class planning, whatever. And I said, oh, I don't have one. She said, did you read the directions for, auditioning for this? You need to come in with your planning, blah, blah, which is a 12-page something. I said, no, I'm sorry. She said, okay, well, go ahead and do your mock class, and hopefully you're prepared for this. Well, Tom, I had no clue I was supposed to prepare for a mock class. So I so I went in front of them, and for the next 15 minutes, I'm doing this mock class. But this is where my theater came in. I pretended I was standing in front of a bunch of university kids, blah blah blah. And she said, "Okay, thank you. Here's your number. You'll hear something in 6 weeks whether you got in or out." Well, when I got my letter in 6 weeks and I opened it up and it said, "Congratulations, you've been selected out of a certain amount of people," I honestly thought it was a joke. Because I'm thinking, there's no way. I mean, I just completely impromptu'd this whole thing. But they said, you've been selected by. So then I got into Pace University in New York City to start my master's degree. But long story short, I met somebody. We moved to Georgia. I started working in a hospital in Georgia, working with, I was a teacher in Georgia in a hospital, because even kids that are in the hospital long-term, they still need an education. I mean, it's a federal law. So it doesn't matter if kids had, leukemia or what, they still need an education. So I taught in a hospital, which I loved that too. I thought that was very interesting. Then after that, we moved to Washington, D.C., where I taught at a juvenile detention center. So this was a pretty scary place. I mean, teachers would leave in ambulances. These kids were rough. Wow. And it was at that point, I decided I just needed a couple more credits to have a master's degree. So I went back to school in Washington, D.C., and I got my master's degree in arts and teaching. So that's as far as my master's degree.
So it's really funny because I see this so many times. People get their degrees in certain field and they do something entirely different.
Yeah, well, the average person changes careers about 6 times. That's what studies show. Yeah, so basically, when I got my bachelor's degree, because I had a dual study in theater and psychology, this is what I say all the time. I started coaching before coaching even got cool. I mean, nowadays, everybody's a coach. Everybody's doing something, coach. But I was coaching before I even understood what coaching was. I used my bachelor's degree to not only coach and help with traumatized teens, but also in religious settings, you could counsel with a bachelor's degree. And we're very involved with our church. So this was down in Georgia. And so I would do premarital and marital counseling with the couples, the singles, the married couples, so forth like that. So I was coaching before coaching even became cool. And then what wound up happening was we adopted our first child. And so I actually pulled out of work completely. I pulled out of everything, and I stayed home to be with our first child. And then we adopted a second child, and I continued to stay home and loved it, enjoyed it. It was wonderful. And then when the last child went into kindergarten, I decided to slowly start coaching again. And so I went into intrapersonal relationship coaching. And intrapersonal relationship coaching is helping people with the relationship they have with themselves. Because I always say the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for all other relationships around you. Mm-hmm. So I would work with people in a variety of ways and areas on the relationship they have with themselves. Well, one time I was watching a TED Talk, and I found this lady. Her name was Debbie Silber, and she was a betrayal trauma therapist, coach, practitioner. And her TED Talk just amazed me. It just amazed me. And I sent her a message, and I was kind of surprised. She got back to me and she said, I have a membership exclusive only community on online. Would you like to check it out? And so I checked it out, and I was just amazed at what she was doing, and I just wanted to be a part of it. So we got talking, and after probably after a good year, she said, would you like to go through the training and actually become a certified betrayal trauma practitioner? And I said, absolutely. And that's what I did. And that's when my coaching business just kind of skyrocketed right after that, which is great and sad. And I say great because, obviously financially it's good. And I'm doing something that I absolutely love. I mean, love. But sad because I wish my job never existed.
Now let's go back to that, because I think that's real important, because when you put yourself in someone else's life, particularly when you talk about trauma, how do you not get affected by that?
Well, I think you have to. It's not necessarily a dissociation thing. I think it's more of a categorization situation. And I'm going to be honest with you, because I do have a strong religious background. I think when I hear of other people's traumas, it gives me a chance to be appreciative for where I am, and also an opportunity to, bring the other person up in prayer and things like that, but not to get all spiritual and religious. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Tom, there's times I'm showering and I'm heartbroken over some of the stories I hear. But that just motivates me to learn more and do more so I can help more.
With the kids, though, it's when you start talking with the kids, particularly way back when you first started doing this, did you kind of fall back on your memories of what you went through, and you were able to relate with the kids more?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like I said, there's something about that relatability factor. It's like this. I recently lost my dad. Actually, about 2 weeks ago, I lost my dad. And when I was standing up at the calling hours, Tom, you could almost look in somebody's eyes when they were looking at you saying, I'm very sorry. You could actually tell who lost their father and who didn't. It's a different energy. It's a different wave. It's a different look. It's a different dynamic. It's a different posture. So you could absolutely work with somebody. And again, I'm not saying I'm not saying that, in order to be a good brain surgeon, you had to have brain surgery. But what I'm saying is that there's no substitute for experience. And when you can relate to someone, you can help them on a different level.
Yeah, because I just recently read a book, and it's I forget the name of the book. Grieve for Me. It's about a wife who lost her husband with a motorcycle accident, and what she went through was, still going through. It's because it happened a couple years ago. There'd be so many people come up and say, "I'm sorry for your loss," well-intentioned, all these different things. They try to console someone, but when you're on the other end of it, you don't hear that. When you talk to someone and they tell you about their own personal trauma, how do you draw into them so they understand that you're there empathetically?
Well, here's the deal. It all depends, and that's a pretty loaded question. It's a good question. Thank you for asking, but it's a pretty loaded question. With some clients, it all depends. First of all, I want to get to know what stage or phase somebody's in before anything at all. Sometimes I'm talking to somebody and they're still in the bear hugging the toilet vomiting stage. And then sometimes they're in the, okay, I think I can breathe. I think I can love again. I just have a few things I need to tweak, whatever. So really you want to kind of know where on the spectrum someone is. Also with some clients, they might not want all that mushy, I understand, I empathize, I was once you, blah, blah, blah. So really it depends. But I think just the mere fact of, and I'm not big on this whole energy thing. I don't want to keep saying energy, but I think when you're sitting down talking to someone, there's just an underlying undertone of understanding. People can pick up on it, and if they don't immediately, it comes through relatively quickly, just in the way you talk or react to them.
I would imagine so. This isn't kind of one-off. I would hope it's not a one-off with some of these people, right? Do you have to follow up with them?
Well, no, sometimes it is a one-off, and sometimes that's all they need. And that's fine too. I mean, I have clients that I've been working with now for a while, but many times I'll just get the one call because, I mean, keep in mind too, even though I do betrayal trauma and I do intrapersonal, I get all kinds of calls. Even I got a call not too long ago from somebody who was going to give a speech, and they just needed some tips on how to be confident in front of the camera. Because I work, with the relationship with yourself. So a lot of times they are one-off, or sometimes somebody's like, you know what, listen, I was divorced 4 years ago. I met somebody. I want to make the next step. I just, do you think I'm making the right decision? Whatever. And, I'll just ask them a series of questions that they need to answer themselves. And they're like, you know what? You gave me a lot of clarity. Thank you so much. I'll never hear from them again. So yeah, a lot of calls are one-offs, and that's absolutely fine. It's what it's supposed to be in a lot of ways.
Well, that's good. Now the two things in this, what you do, it's called Betrayal Trauma Practitioner. We talked about the trauma, but we didn't really talk about the betrayal part of this. And I think that's really key in what you do is, and I watched one of your videos, and we talked about this before we started the show, was you mentioned a metaphor of a mustard seed. Can you kind of relay on that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you a slightly different story, but I will bring in the mustard seed.
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to imagine, and anyone who's listening to this or will listen to this show, I want you to imagine you're walking across a bridge that's 2 miles above land. And you're walking across this bridge, and there is fire and volcano under you, like so hot you feel it. And you're walking across this bridge, and you have 2 of your young kids in your hand, one on each arm. When you're walking across this bridge, the person that you're married to, dating, love, or trust is the one walking in front of you, leading the way. So you're walking across this bridge that's 2 miles in the air. There's volcano under you, fire under you. You have one baby in each hand, in each arm, and you're following the love of your life, the person you trust, whoever that is, you're following them across this bridge. All of a sudden you start to feel this bridge wobble, and you're looking around like, oh my God, what's going on? And you feel it wobbling again. So you clutch your babies a little tighter, and your heart starts to race. Next thing you know, the bridge completely collapses. You got your babies in your hand. You know that down there is death for everything around you. You're completely in chaos. Your brain is hijacked. You quickly hold on to the first thing you can grab, because that's your safety net. That's your only safety net. And when you look up to the person that was walking in front of you, you see them holding the hammer. They're the ones that destroyed that bridge. And you're wondering, what the hell is going on? What is going on? That's the mustard seed of betrayal trauma. So if you take a mustard seed and you amplify it to a watermelon, that's what people experience when it comes to betrayal trauma. Because listen, trauma is trauma, and trauma is devastating. But when it comes to betrayal trauma, it's a whole different type of trauma because of the personal feel of because of the nature that it's personal. It was personal to you. If you lose a loved one, that's horrific. That's sad. That's traumatizing. But you know they didn't die to hurt you, or you know they didn't die to intentionally affect you. For the most part, when somebody betrays you, there's such an intentionality with that. Now, I just want to close this statement by saying this. Even though it feels personal, it's not, because I hear all the time, this person must not love me if they did this. This person must not care for me. This person, and I say, no, that's not true. They loved you. They just didn't love themselves.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think it's really important, because when I start the show, we always talked about, here's the problem, here's the solution. When you start talking to people about betrayal, you just talked about the issue, the problem, the things that they're going through. How do you turn them around other than saying it's not you, it's them? What else can you tell these people that you can go to the next level and not look at the betrayal anymore?
Okay, you just asked a question that would take me about 48 hours to answer. But
okay,
so
we got
let
a
me
few
just say
minutes.
that. So again, I just want to say the first thing to do is find out where on the spectrum are
Yeah.
they. Again, did they just discover their spouse was, having a double life or living a double life or betraying or cheating? Or are they 2 years out of it and they're still struggling, they're still stuck? So really, depending on where they are on that spectrum, that's where you go in and start to do your emotional surgery, so to speak. So, so for instance, just to answer your question, if somebody calls me and they just found out within a week or a couple of days that the person they loved has been betrayed them, the first thing I want to do is get them grounded, because their mind was completely hijacked. They're living in a state of chaos. One of the ways that I describe it is, listen, our life is one big long filing cabinet, right? Right now we're doing the show. After the show, you're going to do this. Then tomorrow you got this going on. 2 weeks ago, you did this. Your childhood was this. We all have our folders. We all have our folders and our papers in those filing. We can trust, for the most part, our future, because we can rely on our past and build on that. When trauma comes in, betrayal trauma, you take somebody's entire existence, you take their entire filing cabinet, and it's like you completely empty it on top of the highest mountain. It's now scattered all over the world. You don't know what's real, what's not real. You don't know what to pick up. You don't know where they are. You don't know. You're just lost. You're lost. You don't have the tools. You don't have the resources. You don't have the wherewithal. So the one thing I try to do is ground people. And those are with some very simple breathing techniques, and there's a million of them, out there,
Right.
to ground yourself. I also have them do some tactile things, like, okay, anytime you're feeling your heart rate increase, name 5 things out loud that you can see, name 4 things that you can touch, name 3 things that you can hear, name 2 things that you can smell. Just go down the list of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the grounding techniques. Okay, so depending on where they are, if that's stage 1, my whole mission is to get them out of brain hijack mode. That's my mission. As we move into the phases, we start to do some inner work, because I'm going to tell you something. My personal belief, anybody can overcome betrayal trauma 90% of changing their internal dialogue. That's it. That's it. Because I'm telling you something, I don't believe trauma necessarily is what happens to us. It's the meaning we get from it. Right. If I were to slap you right now, Tom, if you personalize that slap, you're going to cause yourself suffering. If you're going to say, oh, he slapped me because I was ugly, he slapped me because I didn't ask him the right question, now you're causing yourself suffering. And so one of my jobs as a coach is to use the lessons from my trauma to decrease the suffering that people bring on themselves from the pain other people gave them. Because if I slap you, or let's just say right now I call you frog breath, right? Okay, I call you frog breath. So now you're offended, you're hurt. I offended you. I called you frog breath. Well, you could either tell yourself, that was very rude of Mr. J. That was very disgusting, unacceptable. Or you could spend the next 2 weeks slamming dishes and maybe drinking some alcohol, saying, I can't believe that Mr. J. Next time I talk to him, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Well, now you're causing your suffering.
Right.
So I didn't cause your suffering, you're causing your suffering. So I believe 90% of the movement out of trauma is just changing the dialogue. So anyways, going into this middle stage, what I start doing now is getting into a little bit of childhood, because again, so much of betrayal trauma we personalize it to our first trauma. A lot of times I don't even work with the trauma at hand. I will work with the first trauma because that's what we're relating it to. So if we go in there and work on that first trauma, you now have the tools and the resources and the strength to work on the current trauma. Now, as we go on, then it's like, okay, recommitting yourself to certain things, forgiving yourself for what's called like the Red Riding Hood syndrome, which is betrayal blindness. Do you remember Red Riding Hood? She was so desperate to see her grandmother. She kept saying, wow, grandma, you have big sharp teeth, but yet she didn't run. Wow, grandma, you have big squinty eyes, but yet she didn't run. Wow, grandma, why are you so hairy and furry? But she wanted to see her grandmother so much, she was ignoring those red signs, those red flags. And so you have to get to a point where you forgive yourself for ignoring some of the red flags maybe that you've seen in the relationship. Because trust me, once you start working on those red flags, in the future, those red flags now become deal breakers. Then as you go on, you start to go into stages of putting back your filing cabinet. But the wonderful thing with putting back your filing cabinet is some of those folders don't belong in your life anymore. You really start to evaluate your life and say, you know what? These friends here, they're not serving the new 2.0 me. I don't need to put them back in my filing cabinet. These memories, these people, these habits that I have, these bad things that I do, you know what? They don't serve the new 2.0. I don't need to put them back in my filing cabinet. And then, so again, not to belabor this whole thing, but that was a loaded question, a wonderful question. But depending on where somebody is on the spectrum, that's where you go in and you start doing work where they are.
Well, I like that answer because it kind of puts it from the very beginning to the very end. I think that's real important because you talked about the bridge, and when we talked before the show started, we talked about how people lose sight of their goals, and the goals are too much bigger. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So basically, what a bridge is, it's just bridging yourself to a goal that you want. So, for instance, I can say in 4 months I want to lose 10 pounds. Or in 2 months I want to lose 10 pounds. That might be kind of a big goal to attain. And let's face it, it's easy. It's very easy for us to go on a diet Sunday after dinner. But then Monday, when we start getting hungry and we got to exercise, it's a different story. So maybe a bridge could be something like, you know what, I'm just going to be a little more conscious of what I eat. Or, okay, I'm not going to do anything big, but I am going to write down everything I put in my mouth. I don't care if it's a raisin. I'm going to write it down. That way it's going to bring to my conscious. So what you're doing is you're bringing your goals down a little by bridging them, by just saying, I'm going to, I just want to alter or tweak a little bit, because with all goals, pebbles make mountains and raindrops make seas. Little by little, small changes have great results, eventually. So that's what a bridge is.
No, I like that. Sometimes I lose sight, because of things that I have so much going on that I have to try to say, okay, what's most important? And you kind of forget how to prioritize, because you think, well, I have this in front of me, and therefore I can't do this to get to my goal that I really want to get.
Yeah. And especially now, it's funny because we live in such a microwave society. Like, if you want a cheeseburger, go through a drive-through. Within minutes, you're going to have a cheeseburger. If we want sex, download an app. Within minutes, we can be meeting somebody for sex. I mean, we live in such a microwave society where virtually anything we want, we can get it, but yet we are more busy than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have microwaves 50 years ago. They didn't have DVDs and sex apps and so we live in such a microwave society. We can call Hub Grub, whatever that is, and within minutes you have dinner served to us. When, years ago they had to start dinner early in the morning and then it was done by 4 or 5 o'clock. So, but yet we're busier than ever. So yeah, so these small bridges can help tremendously with keeping our schedules intact as well. I do like the bridges.
Yeah, so do I. Well, we've got just a couple more minutes now. I always like to ask this question because you are where you are right now because that's how you chose your life to be. When you look back at your life, how you grew up, and all these events that happened that got you to this point, would you change anything, or did you feel like what happened in your life gave you the drive to get where you are now?
Most definitely, most definitely. I like I said at the beginning of the show, I think so many people try and find their purpose from their passion, and really your purpose organically develops from pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, no matter what person or hurt human being, well, we're not human beings, we're human evolvements, because I always say, you're a different person, Tom, today than you were 5 years ago, and you're going to be a different person 5 years from now than you are today. So we're human evolvements. But when we go through things in life, if we don't learn from them, then we pay a fee.
Mm-hmm.
If we do learn from them, we pay tuition. So I paid a lot of tuition for my pain. So you better trust I'm going to use that for the good to help somebody else better their life.
And you are
So
helping
no,
a lot of people. I appreciate
yeah,
that.
and I don't wish anything changed. Now, in the moment when I was going through it, certainly, just like when I'm going through things now, sometimes I wish I wasn't going through that. But I don't think or pray for my obstacles to leave me. I think about and pray and work on what tools do I need to overcome this.
Well, great. Now, how can people reach out to you? How your website?
Yeah, I'll give you my website, which I think is the easiest website to remember. It's mrjrelationshipcoach.com. I have YouTube videos on there, which every week I upload a free vitamin J clip, and I talk about everything from dating to romance to death to betrayal, you name it. I have a few other free resources on my website. So yeah, mrjrelationshipcoach.com. All my socials are there. Check me out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Because I was going through all your videos and over this past week just to get re-energized with you, and I learned quite a bit. So thanks again for coming on my show, Jay. It took a while for us to get to this point, but I'm really glad we did this.
Absolutely, Tom. And again, I thank you for giving me this time on your show. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, as the past few weeks, I've been coming up with different core values I talked about, integrity and courage. But today I want to talk about sacrifice. And here's something I found on Pinterest. And this is something that really resonated with me. And here's what it said. Finding yourself is not really how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You're also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself, and unlearning excavation, remembering who you were before the world got its hands on you. And that's pretty profound. So here's another one. Change is painful, but nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere you don't belong. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. And the last one here is build your own dreams, or someone else will hire you to build theirs. So I always like to read these things because those are the kind of things that really jazz me up for. So thank you again, Jay, for coming on my show. And as I end all my shows, I want everyone to smile infectiously, laugh genuinely, love unconditionally, live courageously. I believe in all of you. So have a great week, folks.